There's more to the sport than just fighting, and you either understand that or you don't. And if you don't, then I promise you the guys that are worth money don't want to fight you because you don't get it.
Demetrious Johnson is a guy that's kind of said stuff like that, where I just want to fight, I don't want to worry about the media, that kind of thing. He's a champion, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Does not get a lot of, pay-per-view buys don't really do all that well, ratings don't really do all that well. Is he someone that you kind of use an example of that?
Well, it sounds like you made an example of it, so I can talk on it because you mentioned it. If you're going to use Demetrious Johnson as an example, I would say, yeah, that's probably a fair example. But I think that part of that is because Demetrious doesn't feel that he has maybe necessarily the outpush in front of the cameras that he wishes he could possibly. So he just says, I don't want to worry about it. I'm going to focus on what I can control, which is the fighting aspect of things. And I think that I know Demetrious on a personal level, and I think that his mindset is, I'm just going to focus 1,000% on fighting and nothing else. And if I do that, and as long as I keep winning and keep breaking records and get the most belts of anybody, you can't deny me what I deserve.
Right.
And that's one way of approaching it. So you got the Demetrious Johnson approach, which is, I'm going to fight, and anybody you put in front of me, I'm going to beat, and I'm going to dominate, and I'm going to school them. And so you can't deny me the fame that I deserve. Or you can go the Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey route, which is, I'm going to take 3-4 fights. I'm going to talk. I'm going to say what I need to say. I'm going to be great in front of the cameras. I'm going to be charismatic. I'm going to be on movies. I'm going to get Instagram and Twitter and social media to follow.
Right.
And with that, it doesn't matter if I win or lose in fights. I'm still famous, and I'm always going to get the big fight because media wants to see it.
Right.
So there's two different approaches you can take. I respect Demetrious Johnson's approach, and I respect Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey's approach, But I think that the best in the world, as the sport continues to evolve, will be able to find a happy medium of both.
Sage Northcutt is a guy that a lot of fighters have criticized because he hasn't really accomplished a whole lot yet in the sport, yet he's someone the UFC's really gotten behind as far as the promotional push. There's some resentment from fighters, but how much is it the fighter's responsibility to promote themselves, and how much is the UFC's responsibility to push the fighter to that?
Well, when you mention Sage Northcutt, that's what the bitterness comes from, I think, is that certain people come in and the UFC doesn't necessarily push them at all. And then guys that are brand new that don't even push themselves, like Sage Northcutt, doesn't necessarily go out of his way to do all this stuff, but he gets it anyways because he has a look, because he has a skill set that's dynamic and fun to watch. So I can understand the bitterness, but it doesn't do any good to be bitter. You have two choices.
Right.
You can take what you're given, or you can build with what you've got.
Right.
I choose to build with what I've got and try to make the best of it because I've still been given a stage. I've still got cameras in front of my face when I want them, and I plan to run with it. I'm not going to sit and be sad about what other people are getting because that doesn't get you anywhere in life except sitting right where you're at, crying and complaining like TJ Dillashaw.
You have the fight, obviously, with Urijah, and it's a big rivalry. You guys have always had that heat between you. What is it you think really sparked it?
Ego. I think his ego is just too big for me to handle. I think that that's his worst enemy. I think that I don't need to beat Faber because his ego will always beat him himself. I think that he's got excuses for every loss he's ever had. He's been TKO'd 3 times and still doesn't admit any of those losses or being TKO'd. How do you grow from an experience like that if you don't accept the way that you lost by the person that beat you? You can't grow. Going through these surgeries and the bad fortunes that I've gone through has made me realize one thing. You have to accept the bad things and make a great thing out of it because it'll actually turn you into a machine if you can bask in it and enjoy it and take it for what it is and let it make you a stronger person. If you fight it and say, those injuries, I'll be fine, it's no big deal. I took those injuries and I grabbed onto them and I said, you know what? This is going to make me better. I'm not going to allow this to hold me back and put a freeze on my career and say that Dominick could have done this if he wasn't hurt. That didn't happen. All those years I was gone, I used them very well, efficiently to make me a stronger, mentally better person, a better man. I evolved with those experiences. And somebody like Faber, in my opinion, who's always making excuses for his losses and such, that's his ego talking. He can't admit the fact that he's been beaten. So therefore, he won't grow from those experiences, which creates a stationary, stagnant mindset in a sport that you can only grow in, otherwise you get passed by.
All of the adversity that you went through, what was the toughest for you to take on and face and then turn around, change into something that you learned from?
One of the hardest ones was definitely my second ACL, but I think even harder than that was when I blew my quad out. because I had the second ACL, and then I was getting ready to fight Renan Barão for the belt, finally, training really hard, and then my quad blew out, and it wasn't an ACL, and it was just bad enough that I'd be out for 3 months or so, but not weak enough that I could still fight, and my leg wasn't working. So at that point, you kind of just hold your hands in the air and go, really, what do you want me to do, God? Like, what else do you want me to do? I've been through 2 ACLs, I keep coming back, I keep trying, and you just keep taking these opportunities from me. But that is the idea behind those things, is I went through that for a reason, because he was, in my personal opinion, my higher power is God, and he's putting me through these things in order to pull the better out of me, make me stronger. But I can't get the best out of it unless I accept it and take it and run with it, and that's what I've done. So the quad was probably the worst one, just because I had to vacate my title. I had to give up everything I worked for, not because I lost, but because I was injured, and that's just like, and then you get the guys like Faber who was always bashing on you for it, like, oh, you meant to get hurt, you know, you're not built, whatever. It's like, when you can't fight, you can't say anything about it. That's what's hard about it. So it's like you kind of just got to take it and say, okay, yeah, whatever he says, because he's still competing. And I'm just going to have to sit on my hands and wait until I can compete again. Well, guess what? I'm here again. I'm talking again. Now getting rid of me. I won the belt again. You still need me to have the belt again. And this division's right back where it was. Everybody's talking about it. I mean, when I didn't have the belt, when I was out, who was talking about the 135-pound division? You couldn't even name the top 5 in the division. They kept doing rematches with Renan Barão, who got beat up by Dillashaw. They kept doing rematches because they had nothing else to sell. They had nothing else to go with. Why? Because everybody knew I was the champion. Everybody knew that they needed me back to prove who was the best. And then I went and beat TJ Dillashaw. And now here I am again getting my rematch. And things are right back where they started in 2012. Why is that? 4 years later, nothing changed. Faber didn't touch the belt. Why? He had plenty of time when I was out. He was scared to face the guy. So I went in there and did it for him. That's it.
Do you see any evolution in his game in the last 4 years since the last time you guys fought, or do you think he's basically the same fighter he was back at UFC 132?
I think he's probably a little bit wiser in his business sense. He's grown a little bit wiser in being a man, because, you know, you still evolve as a man or whatever outside of fighting. But as for fighting itself, I mean, what changes do you see? And he's overhand right. He's got a guillotine. He can wrestle well. He's scrambly. That's Urijah Faber. He's been that way since 2007 when I fought him.
So you spoke about his ego and the ways in which you think that's affected him negatively.
Well, what did I say? I said that's why I don't think that he's grown, is because of his ego. Your ego, if you're not able to accept the things that you haven't done right and look at them and put your ego aside and say, you're right, I'm not good at this, this, and this, then you can't grow, you can't build those things. He's unwilling to do so, and I think that's what's kept him stagnant and stationary in his fight career.
Dom, I just want to ask you one more thing about the promotional stuff. When you see Bellator putting on shows with, you know, Place Gracie, Ken Shamrock, Dada 5000, Kimbo Slice, and these guys are not elite MMA fighters, but they're doing huge ratings. Fans obviously do want to see some of that. How do you navigate that as an elite athlete, as someone at the top of the division, you know, one of the top pound-for-pound fighters? How do you navigate that?
It's a super good question, man. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
Again, there's certain things you can control, and there's certain things you can't. And the fact that fans want to see Dada 5000 versus Kimbo Slice, you cannot control that. To be honest, that's a completely different demographic, though, because that's the internet sensation, the YouTube sensation that's coming right over and crossing over to watch those fights.
Casual fans.
Casual fans, correct. So the question really isn't, why are people watching that? The question is, how do I make those people intrigued with me? That's the real question, because it doesn't matter what other people are watching. I can't control that. All I can do is continue to compete at the highest level, continue to train, continue to show up and do my best, and then find what's making those guys interesting to people. And I think what makes that interesting is the ghetto side of it a little bit. It's just like they don't care. They don't care. They don't care if they have an actual athletic event in front of a lot of people, or if they have it in a lunchbox somewhere. It just doesn't matter to them. And I think that there's a certain appeal to that, a certain appeal to just two guys who don't care. And if you really think about it, that's Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, but at a higher level. And they blew their views out of the water. Right. So we got two people in that fight that don't care, just like Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000, except they also compete at the highest level. So you can see that with that mindset and with the skill set, you actually can blow all those fights out of the water anyways.
Right.
do you think this phenomena, the Conor McGregor phenomena, where people are not as concerned for fighters is with the belt and they just want super fights, like Cyborg mentioned, she's more interested in super fights than the belt?
Just kind of opened eyes to the fact that I think that over time you start to realize that the belt, when they're making interim belts for certain people here and there, it kind of takes away the appeal of the belt sometimes. But then again, it's really the only way you can make money in your division and represent your division at the same time. So it's a choice. It's a personal choice, you know. Some fighters want that belt and just say, you know, I'm the leader of this division. Look at it. This is what this means. And some fighters just say, I don't care. Diaz being one of them. He doesn't care. He's cool with just going out there and choking people unconscious, collecting his paycheck, going home, not doing any of this, and being happy with that. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, it appeals to a lot of people. There's fans for every style. And you just got to run with who you are, be yourself, don't try to be what other people want you to be, and then you'll be your best.
Do you think it hurts the legitimacy of the sport when you got the first, the second contenders waiting for that shot at the belt, and then it's...
I'm the bad guy to ask because I had the belt. I was hurt, and I kind of get it. It doesn't hurt the legitimacy, but it leaves questions unanswered. Is the thing. It's like, all right, well, what if he did stay there? Would he, for instance, Conor McGregor's going up and fighting Diaz at 170 again, leaving the featherweight belt for Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar to fight for. There's mixed emotions on that. It's like you look at, okay, what if Conor McGregor goes back down and fights Frankie Edgar at 145 pound, which is an extremely terrible style matchup in a hard fight, and then he loses. Now he's lost all his push, whereas if he stays at 170, fights Diaz, and he happens to lose again, he still has it because he's like, well, but it was at 170. So there's still excuses to make for him to say why he's the best. He loses to Frankie Edgar at 145, you pretty much kill the excuses. And so doesn't necessarily take away legitimacy, but it buys time.
How would you like to see the UFC handle interim title fights?
I don't know. I'm just glad that's not my job. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm glad that's not my job. I'm glad that this is my job. I get to stand here on this side of the mic and then go out there and punch people. I'm cool with that.
What are your thoughts on John Jones's fight with Cormier getting injured? It's like all of a sudden in the
It hurts.
interim belt.
It hurts. When I see people get injured like Tony Ferguson or Khabib Nurmagomedov before with all the injuries he had, or Daniel Cormier, it hurts because I have been on the receiving end of that, and I know the tweets they're getting. I know the crap that these fighters that they're supposed to face are saying about them that isn't true. I know the Facebook messages that they're getting on the DL that are not true, have nothing to do with realness. I just know what they're going through. It's the worst thing in the world to have something happen to you that you can't control, and then on top of that, you have to sit on your hands and say nothing but pat everybody else on the back while they continue to do what you wish you could. It's a real reality check going through injuries like those guys that I just mentioned. And I can honestly say they're in my prayers because that's how difficult it was for me, that I know what they're going through.
Dom, this fight is in LA. CSAC just kind of enacted some new weight cutting rules. Have you listened to that at all? Are you familiar with those rules at all?
I read about it, and I kind of had a little bit of a heart attack moment. Like, wait a second, you need me to be hydrated in California to fight? You guys are playing around, right? Because you know I'm not hydrated up on that scale ever, and you know Luke Rockhold and Chris Weidman are not hydrated up on that scale in a million years. It's not going to happen. So California, you don't want to take that money out of your pockets either. Commission doesn't want to. So it's like, I don't think it's necessary in my personal opinion, but again, that has nothing to do with me. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't think it's going to have an effect on this fight, because if it did, I really believe that I don't know how the fights would happen if you need us to be hydrated while cutting weight, but I can't worry about things that I can't control, and I can't control USADA. I can't control the Commission of California. All I can do is get myself in tip-top shape, get my body fat down as low as I possibly can, keep the lower you get your weight while being hydrated, the better your chances are on that day, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to worry about the things that I can control. I'm not going to bash or say there's anything wrong with what they're doing because they have their reasons for it. But I will say that I'm going to do the best I can to come in as light as I can, hydrated, but that's all I can do is the best I can.
One of the things they're going to do, I'm sorry, they're going to start weigh-ins, I think, at 10 a.m. The day before the fight. So instead of like a 4 o'clock weigh-in, they're going to do it at 10 a.m. There won't be any pomp and circumstance. It'll just be, you guys in a room taking your scale, taking your weight, and then you'll have more time to rehydrate after the weigh-in. Is that a good thing? Do you like that about
The
it?
day of?
The day after the fight. The day before the fight, I should say.
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
instead of 4.
Instead of 4 p.m.
Oh, I
it'll be
like
10
that a
a.m.
million times better.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
one of
it's
the things
intelligent.
yeah.
It's extremely intelligent because what you don't understand is if we're going to weigh in at 4 or 5 o'clock, that means you don't want to cut the weight till midnight the night before because you don't want to be that low for that long because it just depletes you and kills you,
Right.
So now, since we're weighing in at 10 a.m., now we don't have to sit around
Right.
for 6 to 10 hours waiting to step on a scale when we're on weight for hours upon hours. It's not logical. And the truth is, if anybody who was weighing us in had to do what we did, it would have been at 6 a.m. instead of 10 a.m. But they don't have to feel what we feel, so.
Well, they're trying to get it even earlier, maybe even like 72 hours before the fight.
Well, let's make every one of those guys cut weight one time, and then we'll see if we can get it done.
Going back to USADA, what are your thoughts on the Romero negotiated settlement?
My thoughts are it's rough because the nutrition or the supplements are the ones that are to blame for that from what I've read so far. It's like you go to, let's say, this X, I'm not going to say a name of a supplement store. We're going to go to this supplement store, and they're going to take this supplement. I'm going to grab it off, and it's going to say, okay, it's got this, 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 and this in it. I'm allowed to take all these things according to USADA's website that you go on to. Everything's legal. Great. I'm going to put this in my drink. It'll help me recover better after training because you do have to take supplements if you're training as hard as we do, in my opinion. Everybody does something different, but I do take supplements, amino acids, things of that sort. And it is questionable what's in those things. You have to trust the establishment that what are in those supplements are real. And it's supposed to be because there's a routine that they have to go through to make those supplements legally able to put on those shelves. Or is there? That's the question. So if they say that they have to go through the routine, then they should have to. And if they have to, then you should be able to trust it. And if you should be able to trust it, then USADA shouldn't have an issue with it, right? But what are you going to do? I mean, you got to stop taking supplements altogether because you can't trust anybody? Well, it's like, I still have to recover and I still got to train hard. So it's hard to say. I'm not in that predicament, thank God. But it's sad that it kind of still puts a little bit of a mark on what he's done in his career if he didn't do what he's being blamed for. That sucks for him.